So, on the subject of transitioning over to Hercules,
Mhm.
I was actually surprised when you mentioned these had a couple years apart. I kind of always assumed that these two and Little Mermaid were almost concurrent, if not completely, because that
Mhm.
seems like just a ploy Disney would pull to be like three cartoons based on our big Renaissance hits all at once that attract three kind of different audiences. But it sounds like there's like a couple years difference between the lot of them.
Yeah, and they kind of did market it that way on Toon Disney in the early 2000s, but that was when they already had all three of them already pre-made and they were just showing
Hmm.
reruns at this point. But yeah, no, it is interesting to think about the gaps between them because they do have very similar like tone feeling through line throughout all three of them.
Hmm.
That I don't think you really find in any of the other Disney shows. Like I would not necessarily think of them in the same headspace that I would think of like Tailspin or DuckTales on one end or
Hmm.
The Legend of Tarzan or Kim Possible on the other. Like it's very distinct. It's a very distinct vibe. So
It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
closest to the movie vibes, I think,
yes.
isn't it? Like it feels very much like it's made by the same people.
Hmm. And I think that's kind of like a benefit that a lot of these shows had for coming out in the 90s because they were such close follow-ups to the movies.
Mm.
Like I love like one of the Cinderella sequels, but if you put those up against the original 1950s Cinderella, like it's just two completely different universes, like different
Yeah.
voice actors, different everything.
hmm
It's like different adaptations basically. So when you have the ones that were so close in release date, you get a lot more of the natural organic feeling from the original films that bleeds in.
absolutely. And I guess another reason I almost wonder what the process was with making the Arabian Night crossover episode. Not to get too ahead of ourselves there, because we want to discuss the full Hercules episode first.
Mhm.
But by the time they did Hercules and the Arabian Night, I take it the Aladdin series had been done for a little bit. I
Mhm.
almost wonder if they were like, but we're gonna rerun it on Toon Disney. Can you get people excited for that and tie it in with a crossover episode?
Mm.
Is that
That
I
sounds
don't
like
know
a
if
good
that's
that makes sense to me. Like that sounds like a
Mhm.
smart idea.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess before we get there, we do gotta talk about, the Hercules series as a whole and the episode we did. Remind me, Hercules and the
Hercules
River
and the River
Styx.
Styx.
Hercules and the River Styx. I like that. I
They
love that
always have
Full
those.
Metal Full Metal Alchemist ass.
Yes, yes. The deep bellowing voice announcing the title at the beginning.
Yeah. And I like the naming scheme of it always being seeming to always be Hercules and the blank, like it's a classic myth, is very
Yeah.
fun.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, the Hercules show on the whole, like it was interesting because whereas we touched on this before, but whereas Aladdin was a sequel and a follow up, like following his adventures after the events, this one was set during his teenage years, Hercules' teenage years at Prometheus Academy. So it kind of had like a high school AU of Greek mythology going on for it, which I think
Mm.
is such a weird thing to think about, but it works for the like the tongue-in-cheek tone of like the Disney Hercules universe. So it's interesting to look at it.
And I do like this show, to be clear. I do
Mhm.
sometimes view it as having kind of an uphill battle with because Little Mermaid and Aladdin are like universally beloved, and pretty much anyone would sign on to those. I
Sure.
do sometimes get a feeling that some I love Hercules. I think some view it as like a redheaded stepchild of the Renaissance. And I think it lends itself well to a cartoon, but I wonder if there's some reluctance there where it's like, oh, a Hercules cartoon. Like I didn't like that one so much. If there was some like and then people actually and it shakes up continuity a bit because Hades and Hercules meet in the cartoon and it's a high school AU, which kinda maybe reads to some as like, oh, they wanna sell toys. When I think
Mhm.
really this is the most intuitive way you could do a Hercules show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it opens up the universe in such an interesting way because uh I think if you did a straight up sequel to Hercules and did him going on adventures through Greek mythology, then there would be kind of this expectation to go into some of the more some of the more dark aspects of mythology and Greek mythology, and like have to tiptoe around that. Whereas if you're doing a thing where they're all in high school together and anyone can just be like, oh, this is just a fellow student that he meets, like Electra one day, you don't have to
Yeah.
go into like the whole dark thing of her like killing her parents and whatnot. You can just focus on her being like a moody goth teenage girl, basically.
Doing a sequel series also have you writing for Megara, and she's one of my
True.
favorite characters. I don't see her translating as well into like a serialized cartoon the way Jasmine does
Yeah, I
necessarily.
can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
She appears in 2 episodes of the show, but nothing beyond that. One is set in the present day of the show at Prometheus Academy. We see like the teenage Megara, and then we have one that is a sequel where Hercules is like talking about his teenage years with Megara looking back. So it was kind of
Yeah.
like it was kind of what they used for like the frame story of that VHS release Zero to Hero.
Mhm.
So I think that's probably why they did it, was just to have a frame story.
There
There you go.
was,
Yeah.
I want to say there was plans for a Hercules direct-to-video sequel. Am I correct in
Yes.
this? Like Hercules and the
Mhm.
Trojan War, maybe? Is that what it was called?
Yes, that's the one.
Was that pre-animated series or post-animated series? I can't remember.
That was post animated series. I believe that one was planned actually in the early 2000s, like 2005, 2006,
Oh,
2007. So
okay.
like well after this had happened. So I think they kind of were, it was kind of in that same headspace of the Little Mermaid 3 Ariel's beginnings, where
Mhm.
they're like, yeah, we have this era, we did these TV shows like a decade ago, but now we're gonna like do something different with like a different budget or whatever, and not feel obliged to keep up with the canon, because this TV show actually does have an episode where they reenact the Trojan War, which is
Mhm.
they do it kind of like as a high school football rivalry type thing, which is
Mhm.
which is so stupid, but such a fun funny concept. Whereas I think the sequel would have gone more into a more serious take on it, but still like tongue in cheek in the Hercules style, but probably not a straight up high school rivalry. So
Is it
There's
Helen of Troy, who's one of Hercules's like
mhm.
principal classmates here? That's her.
Yes.
mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Who is force fed feta curls in this episode.
The face that
As
launched
Hades.
1,000 zits.
Yep, there's the one. Yes. Yeah, this episode I think was really fun, with having Hades actually successfully take over Athens and Prometheus Academy. And so he doesn't really often get to show up at the actual school. Usually when he appears in the show, he is scheming some plan elsewhere that Hercules has to travel out to. So this was one of the one times where he got to really be on the campus and really interacting with the other students, which I think was really funny, because you had him doing that thing where he was coming up with torments for everyone. Like he would stick Icarus in home economic, not home, no, Cassandra was in home economics. Icarus was in gym class. Um, and Adonis was having to wait hand and foot on his own servant.
Oh
So
yeah, I love
you're
that
right in between the
joke.
toes there.
They're great. Like, oh, I have a servant to do this for me. Like, that's just like a great concept as well.
Wait,
I
new wrinkle,
won't be
babe.
participating in the tournament. Yeah,
Well, in
Yes.
super torment.
Daedric Bader is Adonis, and he's really fucking funny as that
Mhm.
role. He's doing kind of the same voice he usually does, but you don't always see that register from him, and his delivery for some reason in particular really killed me.
Adonis, Prince Adonis, you here, babe?
Present.
Ready for your eternal torment?
I have a servant to serve my eternal punishment for me.
Really? New wrinkle, babe. So, you'll spend eternity serving him! Yes! And let's start with the foot massage. It's so relaxing. Right in there between the toes. Come on.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was him for a long time, because I always associate his voice with like the warp dark matter inflection from the Buzz Lightyear show.
Oh,
And
God,
so
yeah.
like hearing him like up against Adonis, it's like, oh wow, they are the same, but like they're not. So
Different, same words, different fonts. Yeah.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean, this
Um,
this show has such like an incredibly expansive cast as well. Like you've got,
Yes.
in contrast to Aladdin, where you've got like you're like 5 or 6 core characters. This you have just everybody. So you got like all the like Hercules, Cassandra, Icarus, Hades, Pain, Panic, the gods, the school students, like Hercules' parents, the teachers, like the monster of the week. There's a massive cast of people in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think every voice actor comes back, I want to say, except for Danny DeVito and Rip Torn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And, I like the construction of Hercules' close friends being Icarus and Cassandra too, because they're maybe, to put it, to be perfectly blunt, they're like maybe the two biggest like loser characters you could pull out of Greek myth.
Yes, absolutely.
The crazy people.
The psychic no one believes, and the guy that's on fire.
Flew too close to the sun, man.
Yeah. Icarus being French Stewart, who I find pretty funny in the role.
Oh yeah, this was around Third Rock from the Sun times as well, and I remember like that voice, like Third Rock from the Sun was probably on in the evening, and this was on in the morning, and like completely unmistakably the same person because it's so distinct.
And this episode, especially with has a lot of focus on Icarus and Hercules' relationship with one another as well, because it brings in Icarus's dad, Daedalus, as the shop teacher, and they kind of have a disagreement over, because Hercules is not naturally good at shop class because he's clumsy, and so he keeps making a mess of everything, and so he thinks of shop class as being, redundant and stupid, but he doesn't realize that in doing that he's basically talking smack about his best friend's father, and so they have that disagreement through that.
Yeah.
David Hyde Pierce as Daedalus.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get a Niles and Daphne reunion as well, because Jane Leaves is Athena.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, neat. I didn't realize that. And again, Jason Alexander too is Poseidon.
Yeah. We picked the two franchises with Jason Alexander. I love that.
Yeah. There's a very I was just looking at a big cast list for this show, and of course both Aladdin and Hercules had a lot of celebrities because Disney could afford it. But something about the celebrities they picked for Hercules is very you had Jennifer Love Hewitt in an episode, and
Regis Philbin.
Regis Philbin. It feels very glitzy almost to fit kind of the Vegas ideal of Hercules in a way that I think is very becoming of it and really fits, and it's very fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Went for a lot of comedians for this one as well. Like we get talking to Frasier, we get Roz, of course, as Hecate later on.
Yes, Perry Gilpin is Hecate. Man, and I think it kind of stems from the tone set by James Woods as Hades. I think if there's other actors considered for Hades, and we joke about all the time how there's always
Do you want to list them? How long have we got? Patrick Stewart. Always Patrick Stewart.
I think that the two that have a lot of credence for actually almost happening are John Lithgow and Jack Nicholson. And I think if either of them had been Hades, the Hercules IP, the Disney Hercules IP, would look so different because it was James Woods' Hades that brought forward that tone of what if the gods acted like executives almost, and the warriors
gods
and
for Jeffrey
athletes,
Katzenberg.
Exactly, and the warriors and athletes are their Michael Jordan and their their IP almost. So it did allow for a lot of casual tone for your Jason Alexanders and your Perry Gilpins to play the gods in these really funny personas, and I think that's what gave Hercules its really distinct mark in that way.
And speaking of James Woods, this is the only episode and only thing within the Hercules universe and extended universe where we see him singing as Hades, which is a sight to behold.
It's a very generous term for what it is.
Right. It's not good, but it's got a charm to it that I have to admit I do kind of vibe with.
So. I remember really liking this song, and it is the Parthenon, that crowning jewel. It is just a spoken words jazz number. I don't know how to describe it.
Right. It's one maybe I could sing it myself because I can't sing worth a shit, but you know, maybe
Well, it's
this
like a
one.
real estate commercial jingle
Yes.
Yeah,
almost. Like,
yeah.
Because like it
sure,
starts out very somber and like depressed with like the muses singing about like, oh my gosh, Hades has taken over everything. His ego must be, you know, quite a load. And then Hades just like, okay, we're switching the whole vibe here. Let me just like change this to my thing. So
I do remember being like, I was really enamored with this as a kid because I do remember watching Hercules and being disappointed that there was no villain song.
mhm.
And then the show gave us one, and I was like, oh, Hades has finally got a villain song. And it's a bit strange.
Yeah,
It's not really that great, but I'm
because
happy for it anyway.
yeah, the only other time that Hades like ever sings in anything, to my knowledge, which is pretty good, but was in Mickey's House of Villains during Our House Now. But it's not James Woods; it's Rob Paulson who sings for Hades in that song.
As James Woods just was less like, no,
Yeah.
never
I don't
again.
I don't even think they got James Woods for House of Villains. I think they used stock audio of him for that movie.
oh gosh, because I was gonna say was like what was stopping James Woods from saying where everyone's a friend of mine? Like anyone
Yeah.
could have. Like,
Yeah, everyone's a friend of mine. Sounds nothing like him.
Yeah, I think well because they had James Woods back for a lot of House of Mouse episodes, and they I think because they used him a lot because he was someone who was willing to come back. Like him, Jonathan Freeman, Timon and Pumbaa's actors were used in House of Mouse a lot. This is kind of veering off topic, but
sure.
just for House of Villains, like he doesn't really have a very major role in it because even though he's one of like the five main ones that are like singing on stage at the actual number, when we cut to the villains like sitting together and like plotting and scheming, it's just Jafar, Captain Hook, Ursula, and Cruella de Vil. So it was just those four who were mainly brought on for the number. So
I think he's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's very enthusiastic about it though, isn't he? And he's gone on
yeah,
record
he's
like,
all for it. He's just
I'll
like,
do
yeah,
it. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, anytime you need me to do it, I will be there. So, not sure
um,
where he stands now. Don't know where he stands these days. He may have
well,
gotten on the wrong side of Disney.
Well, the last time
well,
he voiced him was Kingdom Hearts 3 in 2019. So like and that was
Okay.
after he became horrible. And he probably is going to be in Kingdom Hearts 4 cuz someone who seems to be Hades appears in the trailer for that. So they'll probably get him back for that too, but I
mhm.
don't know. Who knows?
um, and I'm sure like his skill for improv is no small part of what makes Hades Hades. And if it had
Definitely.
just, you can get Corey Burton to voice match Hans Conried, and you can match the style of writing pretty well and make a pretty organic hook. Whereas it's so hard to emulate Hades' voice, literally, and also his
Yes.
voice of like just his manner of speaking and like the small flourishes that have to be like largely James Woods whispering to himself in the booth.
Yeah. It's very much similar to Robin Williams in that same way, tying it back with the Aladdin thing we were talking about.
I mean, all credit to Evan who voiced Hades in Disney versus
Deviant.
non-Disney. When I would just send him the lines and be like, "Here's the basic framework of the scene. Please feel free to say whatever the hell you want." And then I would somehow just make it work because I didn't know how to write for Hades. He's a really difficult character to write dialogue for because
He is.
he needs to
Yeah.
go about 1,000,000 miles a minute. And
100%, yeah.
yeah, it's
And like
difficult.
like I have kind of a unique experience because I role played as him back in the day, so I was like writing for him on the daily.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of like internalized a lot of those weird James Woods patterns to his speaking. So like when the time came to like do like the Disney versus non-Disney villains things or to write my fan fiction Quite a Glittering Assemblage, like it was just like, okay, I got this. Let me just dive right in here. So
Well, and it does like the TV show Scrubs has the character the janitor who was so much just like inspired by the actor himself to the point that some scripts would just have instead of an actual line of dialogue, it would just say janitor says something funny, and the actor would just like go for it. And that's how I have to imagine a lot of like Hades declares his plan, and James Woods is like, "All right, bet, got it, heard."
Old Flame Top is honing a plan for rezoning and taking his show on the road.
Just look at him gloating while busily boating. That ego must be quite a load.
Come on, ladies, sing along with Hades. Let me show you girls around in my town.
New Hades
Sure
here.
beats living underground in my town. I got a penthouse on Spark Avenue. I'd like you to see museums and parks and works of art, all, hey, dedicated to me. We'll shop at Doom and Gloomingdale's in my town. We'll dine tonight in Togan Tales in, yeah, my town. I'm the host who loves to toast. Know the job well done in my town.
In his town.
I'm number one.
Not in my book, you ain't.
Hey, I'm Monarch. I'm Mayor. I'm Chief of Police. And oh ho ho.
His
Yeah.
town.
The hottest spot in all of Greece. That's a home, what town? The Parthenon, that crowning jewel. Could use my flair for urban renewal. What? I'm just kidding. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm serious. Not hot. Yeah, in my town. Hey, you gotta love it, don't you? Keezer with the ballet. Thank you very much. Good night.
His town.
I think this episode has one of his more interesting ones in terms of like concept, because we know from, well, actually, it's never referenced in the movie that he and Zeus are brothers, but it is talked about in the TV show all the time. Like, they are always referenced as brothers to each other. But Poseidon is also a brother to Zeus and Hades. And I think this is really the only episode, there might be one other, where their relationship to each other is referenced. And this is where we really see the two of them get to interact with each other.
Mhm.
And he's, for those who haven't seen it, he's tricking Poseidon into moving the river Styx to encompass Greece so that he can take over the entire country, basically. And I think it's just so fun to see that chemistry between Hades and Poseidon, because it's James Woods and Jason Alexander both doing their thing against each other, and it's a sight to behold, I think. So
It's Hades playing Poseidon like a fiddle, completely and
yes.
utterly.
absolutely.
See? It's like shooting fish in a barrel, bada bing. We gotta get you a city-state. Like, I don't know, I see you with like Athens. If it were up to me, I would give you Athens. Oop, did I say Athens? Poseidopolis. Poseidopolis, how's that sound, huh? Nice, huh?
Poseidopolis.
You know, of course, it's not up to me. I mean, it never will be. Unless... Nah.
What? What? Unless what?
It's Meshuggah. It's crazy talk. The river Styx is the official border of my domain. You see, if the river Styx were to alter its course to say, include Greece, it's crazy talk. Unless some aqua deity with the power to move rivers were to intervene, to make Greece part of the underworld, then of course it would be my call who gets Athens.
Yeah, right. Wait a minute. I could do that.
Whoa, what? You think I was serious? I can't give you Athens. Gee, the jewel of Greek city-states, never.
Please, please.
Okay, shake. Ooh, what a deal maker you are. What a handler, huh? And they say you're wet behind the ears, huh?
And it's so great to get some expansion on the gods from that movie as well, because they've all got such like really distinctive designs, and you
Yes.
really just see them in passing in the movie. Like, I think Ares is like the only one I remember saying anything, like when he gets sucked into the "you win back," like nobody else
Yeah.
really gets any lines.
Ares and Apollo are the two that get voiced, yeah.
Yeah. So it's they're all such interesting designs for minor characters that it's great that they have a whole series to expand upon them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's such an asset that the original movie had, was because you could look at the crowd of gods, and even though they weren't like talking or speaking, you could identify exactly who each one was if you knew Greek mythology. Like, you could perfectly match god to name. And so this show had a lot of good groundwork with those great designs to build off of, which I think was definitely a strong asset here.
Oh yeah.
There's one that just straight up looks like an hourglass shape, and I'm like, Aphrodite probably.
She got the
Lisa Kudrow is Aphrodite, I want to say, in this.
Yes, yes, she is.
Aphrodite, Aphrodite. She gets that
The
little theme
goddess of
music.
love.
Yeah.
Man, the gods in the movie too. I think like, as a kid, I was never like I wasn't a big Disney kid, contrary to Evan. And I think as a kid, it's hard to articulate differences between like budget and animation. But sometimes
Yes.
when I'd put on the show, there would be a small thing in my head where I'm like, something's different. And I think one thing about the God character designs is that in the movie, they all seem to have like a filter on them almost. They have like this very distinct glow to their
Yes.
color. They're solidly a big primary color. And then there's a glow to them. So it's like, and they fully embody and represent this thing. Then in the show, they couldn't seem to quite do that. So they're all these very solid colors. Like Hades is a shape, and his primary color is blue and then a darker blue on top. And then Poseidon is also very blue. So that's something that I think they maybe had a challenge with in this show. But like the quality of the animation and like how big their voices are still really helps them carve out their personality and stand out.
Yeah.
I think the animation in this, I think, is sometimes a little questionable.
Little hokey pokey.
Yeah, I think it's because the movie looks so good and those
Yes.
designs are so distinct in their style that when you try and translate those hyper detailed, hyper stylized designs into a much lower budget product, it's like, oh, they don't look so good anymore.
Yeah, because Hercules and Aladdin were both of the era where like the animated pictures were getting so much budget and so much budget for the animation. Because like The Little Mermaid was honestly kind of low budget in terms of its animation. Like it looks beautiful, but it was of that era where they were still recovering from the Dark Ages, the Black Cauldron, and a lot of failures that they had had. Whereas by the time we got to Aladdin, it's like, oh, we got Beauty and the Beast money, and we're gonna spend it. So
Yeah.
they really had the budget at that point. But then it kind of tapered off with Mulan and Tarzan. It's like, oh well, we're kind of just trying to get what we can get at this point, and then
Yeah.
phase out hand drawn animation. So
The Tarzan show, I think that has some good episodes. The Tarzan show, I think, is rough in visual.
it is very rough. It's a choice. It's a
Yeah.
great show,
It's a
but
choice.
it's a choice in terms of animation.
Yeah. Anything else about this episode specifically before kind of the main event of the two crossing over?
Nope.
I think I'm good. I think we covered everything.
All
But if
right.
we want to talk about our favorite episodes of the Hercules show, that would
yeah,
probably be a good
of
idea
course.
as well. So this one is one of my favorites, The River Styx, and of course the crossover is as well. But thinking about ones that I really also enjoyed, I really loved the Hercules and the Tapestry of Fate because it brought in the Fates and had them in more of a central role because they appear sometimes as like background characters in an episode, but that one really allowed them and their powers to really be shown off. I really like Hercules and the Visit from Zeus, which was included in the Zero to Hero release packet. Basically, in that one, Zeus turns himself mortal and becomes Hercules' friend to try to prove Herc wrong that high school's not that tough. Even a god, I can do it. And then he's like, I actually cannot do it. And Hades gets involved, of course. And not Hercules, Cerberus is a puppy in it, and he's so cute. So I love that. And the one other one I'll mention, and then I'll stop giving Martin things to edit, is Hercules in the Underworld Takeover, where Hecate shows up and overthrows Hades, and you get sort of that rivalry aspect. That one's really good.
Yeah. And Hecate is one of the, we rattled off villain after villain after villain for Aladdin. I feel like Hecate is like probably the big one besides Hades himself that really makes an imprint in this show in particular. Partly because they didn't have as many, but partly because she's just like terrific.
Yeah, I think Hecate, Echidna, and Nemesis tend to be the three that people remember from the show.
The committee will consider Artemis's request to designate the Caledonian boar endangered. And now, what's next on the agenda, Hermes?
Well, today's supplicant is a demigoddess and underworld enchantress. Deities, I give you Hecate.
Huh? What the?
Babe, the winged pooches are too nutty, babe, but no minions, policy, babe.
I respect that. Policy is a policy.
Hello, darling. Aphrodite, lovely as always. Oh, Demeter, this spring is your freshest yet. Ares, I love what you've done with Sparta. So Spartan.
You hear that, sis?
Oh, go polish your spear.
Oh, I'm not talking to you.
You're on my list. Which?
I guess on my end, I like Hercules and Electra because Hercules loses himself for a hot goth chick and he's just like me for real.
Been there. Not with a girl, but you know.
Yeah. Man, and you know, like I like the establishment. You know, I think people complain Hercules is a little bland sometimes in the movie, and this show gives him a lot of like high school hurdles. It's like frustrated with woodshop and like kind of you know, like kind of a dork with girls sometimes. I think that's a really fun angle to come at Hercules for. And I'd say besides those, really all of the Echidna and Typhon episodes are terrific. I like Regis as Typhon a lot. I like, you know, the monster designs for the children of Echidna are some I always found really, really cool. And you know, I think one of my favorite like actiony bits is Hercules in the Colosseum with a lot of them and fighting,
Big
you know,
games,
doing this, doing the big trial against all those different monsters. I always thought that came together really nicely. Echidna herself is just a very fun villain. She gets a song too, and it's silly, but fun stuff. And yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, were you done?
I was challengingly ending a sentence. I was like, yeah.
Someone pick up the ball. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
I think apart from like, I think most of Evan's would have been the same as mine. The only one that nobody's mentioned so far, I think it's the Tiff on Olympus.
Oh my gosh, I love that one. I forgot it.
I always enjoy that one. There's like the entire basis of Hades' scheme to take over Olympus is just causing one big marital dispute between Zeus and Hera and just keeping them busy.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And it is, you know, could have been a lot worse as we see in actual Greek myth.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well,
yeah. Well,
to the crossover episode.
Crossover with speed.
Woo!
Hades, this will not go unpunished.
By whom? Mortal you? Forgive me if I fail to tremble. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Go, chomp!
Leave my friend alone! Please?
This is so great on like so many levels.
Hades? When my father finds out that you're meddling in mortal affairs, you're gonna...
Well, I got news for you, Junior. Daddy's standing right next to you. And when it comes to mortal affairs, he's right in the thick of things. Isn't that right, Zeus?
Huh?
Like father, like son, like Chow.
Let me just make sure I got this straight. You turned yourself into a teenager?
I wanted to prove you wrong. It didn't exactly work.
And it is, I cannot emphasize enough, it is insane that we could watch this crossover between Hercules and Aladdin cartoons, but not the Aladdin cartoon on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And this one is it's like timeline wise, it's kind of interesting because the Aladdin timeline in this crossover is set after the King of Thieves, which you can tell because Aladdin's wearing his outfit from King of Thieves, not from the TV show.
Oh.
but Hercules is still in like his prequel era, so Aladdin has already had like his entire saga going on, and then Hercules hasn't even had his big, moment for the movie yet. So they're kind of at very different places in their life, but still coming together here, which is interesting. So.
Yeah, and it is, yeah. We touched on earlier. I do just kind of wonder, like, how this came about. Like, they probably move really fast with production, but I do think it's a lot of the voices still coming back, and what it was like for the name of Aladdin's voice escapes me.
Scott Weiner.
Thank you. I almost called
You're
him
welcome.
Scotty Ray, and I'm like, that's the Shredder. What am I saying?
Very far.
And just having him be like, "Can you be Aladdin one more time for the time being?" And I guess he's in House of Mouse too. I'm sure he's always happy to come back.
Yes,
but it must have been a little funny to be like, "You're gonna fight Hercules," and he's like, "Whoa, what?" Like,
yeah, I think a lot of the incentive for doing this, especially, lies on the fact that they just had Jonathan Freeman and James Woods both so enthusiastic about coming back to their characters, because they do it in House of Mouse as well. But just to be able to have those two like big Disney villains coexist with one another, and like they knew like the fans were going to go crazy for it because it's Jafar and Hades teaming up together. Like, can you name a cooler concept in Disney? Yeah, so it's just I think there was a lot of potential there because of the easy access with the voice actors as well.
absolutely. And generally we've always seen Jafar in a context where he's in control of a situation. He's very much, he's always been, it's always been Iago under his thumb and no one else really present outside of the heroes to challenge him. So it's a very different dynamic where he's a bit more at the mercy of Hades. And I think that lets, a side of Jafar come out that's very funny. I think people forget he's capable of having a very particular sense of wit that plays off of Hades really well. And I think that makes these scenes come together really nicely.
What's with the laughing? Who is that? Who does that help? Well, it punctuates my evil. It's a flourish.
Yeah.
Just bursting out.
Like, what is that, like a bronchial thing? It's always the line that makes me laugh. It's just watching, like, with his dead-eyed, like, 1,000-yard stare in the foreground, and Jafar's in the background funny. Just cackling insanely.
And he gets Hades to, like, ultimately start doing the evil laugh thing too in the end, which is great.
Yeah.
I do like it. I like it. It's like it's cleansing.
I think Hades brings Jafar back to life, and he's instantly like so excited that he starts shooting lasers and fireballs and laughing. And Hades like, calm down. Here's more context for the situation. Then brings him back again, and they reuse, I think, the same footage.
It's just
and like again. Probably for a cost-saving measure, but it's also just like really funny that it goes in one of Jafar's ears and out the other.
Yeah.
Jafar tries to prove that Hercules isn't such a big deal to go fight him, and it is more of just like, oh, it's weird that I'm watching Hercules fight Jafar, and it's very cool. And I do like that they very intentionally focused on how Hercules is this very strength-based hero who has to kind of learn a lesson in way of using his head more often, whereas Aladdin is very crafty. Use your noodle. And then Aladdin is very crafty, and he often learns lessons about friendship and trusting people. And what gets them to fight each other is a matter of manipulating Aladdin's heart when they take a boo. And I think that's a very faithful way to play up both characters that way.
Absolutely. And I always think too about the way that they ultimately do win against Jafar and Hades is by having sort of like that clever idea where they switch clothes even though they don't look like each other, but like it tricks Jafar because I guess the lighting in the underworld is terrible. Which, let's be real, it is. But they do that, and so they get Jafar to use the tactics that he would use against each of them on the opposite one so that they could more easily like work around his magic, which I thought was a really cool way to resolve it. Because Jafar is very specific and tailored in the way that he approaches the two of them, with he did like the scorpion for Hercules because Hercules would have been very clumsy and would have gotten stung, whereas Aladdin, he's got to just throw like something really hard hitting and like trapping him within that block of molten rock, because he's like, oh, Aladdin's just a normal guy, he can't get out of this, but obviously it's
Hercules can, yeah.
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 Must have been really bizarre for like Hades. Like Hades' confusion as to why Aladdin is a problem is understandable, because like his arch nemesis can like defeat a whole group of Titans single-handedly and throw them into the sun. And it's just like, so my enemy can pick up a mountain and has the strength of 100 men. What can yours do? Well, he's very clever and he's got a monkey.
Yeah, poor Hades did not have the context of the TV show where some other gods had some trouble with Aladdin.
True. Also, the amazing bit where Hercules deals with Jafar one-on-one by picking up, I think, a large rock, running off screen, and us hearing and being left with our imaginations that Hercules has just like bludgeoned Jafar as we hear his scream.
Well, it's Phil's house. He literally picks up Phil's house.
Oh, God.
I said, use your head, not my house.
And then Jafar just falls horizontally down back into the underworld, and we're left to assume his human flesh was like crushed beneath a building.
Yes.
They wicked witched him.
Yeah. They really should have. I wouldn't have put it past them to put in a gag, but I guess they didn't want us to know what Jafar's feet look like. I think that's forbidden knowledge.
The greatest mystery of the series.
Yeah.
Do we get to see? Apologies, I watched this about 2 weeks ago before we initially moved the date. Do we get to see
Jafar's?
Yeah,
that's mostly on me. But go on.
Do we get old man Jafar again in this?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I thought so.
Yeah, he uses that to manipulate Hercules because Hercules hasn't seen it yet. He goes up and is like, I believe. Why did I make him Southern? I don't know.
Southern prospector.
I believe those were the men who got kidnapped. No, but yeah. And then Hades is like, what is this, a budget cut? Hey, if you need some petty cash, just ask.
I love that they bring that back though. That's a great little
wonderful little nod,
callback, yeah. Because that's, I think, the only other time we've ever seen Jafar's old man disguise animated.
That's true.
Because he doesn't do his snake form or his genie form at all in this crossover. I don't think he has the genie form anymore. I think he lost it when he died. But the only one that we do see is the old man disguise, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's like he retains the most powerful sorcerer ability, but he doesn't retain the genie ability. Because he's still got his pointed hat. So yes. I don't know.
Yeah.
He lost one form. But,
Yeah. Every time he dies, he loses one form. And the next time you see him after this, he'll be back to the rounded hat.
Right. Yeah, House of Mouse, he is back to the rounded.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Well, after Aladdin and his trickery, a muscle-bound ox like Hercules would be child's play.
Oh, really? You care to back that up, you stiff?
In a heartbeat, which I don't have insofar as I am dead. Of course, you could remedy that.
What have I got to lose? Okay, my bro, you're back with a vengeance. Bada bing.
Yes, I am alive again and ready to exact my revenge upon Aladdin.
What is that, like a bronchial thing? As long as you hold that staff, you are flesh and blood, emboldened, empowered with incredible magic, yada yada. Hello. Priorities, babe?
And we also see fused pain and panic into a weird chimera, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, they have that cool form together. And that's another thing I wanted to mention for the Hercules show, is just that Pain and Panic, I think, got a lot of really good focus in the show, and they were really good about expanding on them and using their shape-shifting abilities in really cool ways. And I think this instance with them becoming that monster and attacking Aladdin it definitely, like, made you feel like the Aladdin cartoon as well, because it very much got back to like the rumble in the streets of Agrabah when a magical monster is like coming to, be problem number 27 of the day in Agrabah. So
problem that wouldn't have happened with Jafar in office,
exactly.
And it,
Jafar's
I
in
think
hell, so hey.
yeah.
Make Agrabah great again.
No. That
would have been like Jafar running for office. Like,
yes.
Under the Sultan, like, look at all these problems. We need to make Agrabah great again. Yeah, I guess the show does forget that Hades thought Hercules was dead at this point. And in the movie, many years later, he was still under that impression. So something happened between the end of this show and where it picks up later in the movie, where Hades forgot Hercules was like. Isn't there an episode about like a forgetful fountain somewhere?
Yes, the Lethe water. And they use that to explain why Hercules and Megara don't remember each other in one episode. So Hades and Hercules must have just gotten doused by some water at some point off screen.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I liked revisiting these. I thought they came together really nicely. It was definitely a different time for adaptations where, like I think there's Big Hero 6 and Tangled now, which I haven't gotten around to watching yet, but I noticed those are a bit more serialized than these appear to be. I think if these shows happened now, there'd be a bit more expectations for less episodic adventures and more of a heavy continuity. And I think that, helps them stand out quite differently. And I think it fits like the format of Greek myth and the Arabian myth really, just organically, because that's what they've always been.
Yeah, I think honestly, like having a more serialized continuity to either of these shows would have really been to their detriment, because I think what was such a strong asset to both of them was that we were able to go on so many new adventures and to see so many different characters and to see so many different aspects to these worlds, and that really allowed us to just have a good casual time without feeling beholden to sit through every single episode. We could just put on whatever episode we wanted to and just be like, oh hey, we want to watch The Citadel, we want to watch The Secret of Dagger Rock, and you don't have to watch like anything else for context with that.
Yeah, I miss those days.
I know. It was easier to watch TV.
It was.
Yeah. Well, do we have any closing thoughts? I feel like we wrapped that up in a rather neat little package, and it only took us slightly south of 2 hours. Good job, team.
There you go.
Sorry, I rambled. I know.
Oh no!
Shows, I mean, we have a guest, which allocates more time, and 2 shows connected to the biggest animation studio ever, with rich histories and cultural influences. So I think it's forgivable. This one needed some time to breathe there.
Sorry, Martin.
No, not at all.
Good luck.
So that'll be another 2-parter.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, a fine set of shows that I remember very fondly. Please, for the love of God, Disney Plus, would you hurry up and put on Aladdin, the series, onto Disney Plus? For goodness sake, what are you doing? What are you playing at? I could restore it myself if you want.
Yeah. Because like you can't even like watch the Aladdin TV show anywhere. Like, is there a place where you can buy it anymore? I don't think there is.
I don't know. I do not think. I always like to research that before we do animates, because the answer is often weird and hilarious. And when I search Aladdin, there are people who are doing like their own fan-made DVDs, just assembling rips of episodes onto their own discs in a way that I think they could only get away with if Disney cared a little less, because like I think this is a situation where if Disney can't be bothered on Disney Plus to put it on Disney Plus, they can't be bothered to police people in their basement just putting it on DVDs and sending them out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the way it used to be. I had to buy in 2003, I had to buy the New Adventures of He-Man complete series on a bootleg DVD set.
Mhm.
And it would vary wildly from second to second in quality. And you would get like, Skeletor, why don't we get for like 5 minutes until the picture corrected itself? And I'd be like, oh, okay. Missed a bit there.
I think the all-time greatest tweet on anime Twitter is like, you're also spoiled with Funimation and Crunchyroll able to stream everything. Back in my day, I had to buy 3 episodes of Dragon Ball on a bootleg from a guy named Spider. And then it would be the subs would be in the wrong language or something.
Yeah, that was like me downloading from Kazaa back in like the early 2000s. Like, oh, hey, I found 1 episode of G.I. Joe. I wonder what the quality. Oh, it's terrible.
That's a throwback and a half.
Yeah. It was fun though. There were fun days where you could find like a random episode or something, and that was like amazing that you tracked down a single one.
I have such random nostalgia for like those early days of the internet, like the random like fan sites that went along with them as well. Like it's just it was such a different time. It was so pure in a way, but not pure at the same time.
You'd go on a Gargoyles website and your mouse cursor is suddenly like the shape of Lexington.
Yes! Yes! Those were the best.
Oh, good times. We should have Evan back on to do Gargoyles. I don't know why we didn't think of that sooner.
I will absolutely come back.
Oh, good. We've not scared him off.
No, you haven't, I promise. Thank you. And I did want to say thank you so much for having me on. This was such a fun thing to do and such a fun thing to talk about and revisit with you guys. So
it's our pleasure.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
I've been meaning to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Join us next time when we discuss what's a really obscure Disney?
We won't be discussing anything until you get on top of editing together those episodes, Lexington.
I don't know what character that was.
You're the only one of us gargoyles that knows computers. Lexington.
Was that Goliath? Or was that?
I hope so.
Vaguely like Xanatos. I wasn't sure what you were going for.
I can maybe do Hudson. I never learned to read, and I never learned how to edit podcasts. That's on you, Lexington.
Just go full Ed Asner mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Join us next time for what's that weird one with the rabbit man with the big nails?
Oh, Bonkers.
Bonkers. Join us next time when we discuss Bonkers, the show that nobody, not even me, can remember.
He was the number one.